How is everybody doing? Welcome back to another episode of The Banker Next Door. I am your host, Dr. Joe Berquist. Today, this is kind of like a book review, but not necessarily. I'm going to go through 8 books here of basically what I would recommend for bank directors if I had somebody who came to me and said, hey, I'm looking to become a bank director, or if I was recently appointed to a bank board, or maybe somebody who's been a board veteran for a long time and was just looking to maybe brush up or get some different ideas or whatnot. So I have a list of 8 books that I put together, and like I said, I've been waiting a while to really do this episode, and I just haven't had the chance to get to it just because there's just been, breaking news or just more kind of important things there. But like I said, I want to go through this. So I'm going to bring in a PowerPoint here. So what should bank directors be reading? And we're going to walk through these 8 books here. So the list of books, and I'm going to show you each book. I'm going to kind of show you the cover. And like I said, I have it on here so you can, like I said, if you're watching the video of this, you can rewind or pause it. You can get the names and stuff if you want. If you're listening to this on the audio, just try, like I said, I'll try to walk through it so that if you want to write stuff down as I'm going through this, you can. First 2 books on the list here are, so the first one is called The Ultimate Guide for Bank Directors. This is the revised edition, and this is by Catherine Gigliery, if I'm saying that right, which probably kill me if I butcher her name, and then Jewel Hoover. And they also are the authors of the second book, Boardroom Strategies. But I'm just going to show real quick. So this is, if everyone can see that. So this is I know it's getting a little glare there. So because it's got kind of a glossy cover, but The Ultimate Guide for Bank Directors. Now, the reason why I like this book, and I'm just going to run through you the kind of the table of contents just so you can get an idea here. So this book basically it's a thin book. It's a quick, easy read. It's like, 75 pages. It's very short, but it does a good job of just giving you kind of the once over. It basically has, talks about banking and regulatory framework, the role of a bank director. If I could flip to the next page. And then it gets into risk management. It talks about CAMELS, which I'll do a whole episode just on explaining what CAMELS is and how banks are rated on CAMELS. But it's absolutely critical for any bank director to understand the CAMELS rating and how the different parts break down and what is a good CAMELS rating versus a bad rating, and what that can mean to the bank if you get a bad rating. So, and then it goes over internal controls and audits, surviving an enforcement action, consumer compliance, and then it hits on some more significant banking legislation. And now Boardroom Strategies, right here. This is Boardroom Strategies. This is a very different book. This book really talks, and again, it's a very short read. I think it's 50 pages. Yeah, it's like a 50-page book, but this book is really more about how you should operate with the rest of the board. I mean, this really gets into just really the nuts and bolts of basically, working together, being a good team, finding your own voice. Bank boards have unique requirements, management versus board dynamic. What tone should you take at the top? Relationships, that's the name of the game. Looking through the other lens, lead director or CEO is board chair. Do I belong here? Composition of the board. It's really crowded in here. Retrenchment is not a bad thing. Practicing your elevator speech, participation is required. It doesn't end with the board meeting. So this is just a great thing, kind of like a great book about just kind of like teamwork, the board dynamic, perhaps the politics, if you will, of being on a bank board, and just different things that you should know about it. Next book on the list here is called The Bank Director Survival Guide, and this is by Charles Thayer. This is a really good book. Again, kind of doing a little bit more of the once over, but it kind of gets into, this is kind of a mixture between the first 2 books. Basically, like, it says, invited to join a bank board, management and tone at the top, your bank's management team, your job as a bank director, board leadership, board member selection, your board meeting, bank regulatory exams, board committee organizations, audit committee, compensation committee, risk committee, strategy and planning, bank M&A, kick the can or time to go. And again, it's a 105-page book. It's a very, short book, easy to read, but gives, like I said, a good once over of, and like I said, this gets a little bit more into the different types of board committees, regulatory compliance, maybe just some things you need to know. But like I said, also a little bit of mixture of the first two books. Now, this book is an older book. So you can see here, the first three books are written 2015, 2019, 2017. Those are basically the newer books on my list here. This is called The Business for Banking. The Business of Banking for Bank Directors this is by George Darling and James Chaston Jr. And this was written in 1995, and this is through the RMA, the Robert Morris Associates. And I really like this book, even though, and this may be a little hard to get a hold of this, but again, relatively short book, only about 60 pages in length. But it really does a great job of just going over the basics, the introduction, like the director's duties and care of loyalty. Very important thing, the basic banking concepts, regulatory issues, credit issues, responsibilities, and as far as this is all under credit issues, but responsibilities, building blocks to fulfilling responsibilities, influencing credit risk, information packages for portfolio monitoring, loan review and its use by the board, directors' responsibilities and approving credit, loans to insiders, analysis of allowance for loan losses. And then it gets into balance sheet management. And then finally, strategic planning. So a lot of really good stuff in this book. Let's see here. There was one thing I was looking for if it had, the duty, basically it gets into, directors' duties and care of loyalty. The duty of care requires performance of the job in a manner that reasonably and prudent person in a like position would exercise in a similar circumstance. The duty of loyalty prohibits directors from putting their personal or business interests or those of others above the corporate interests of the bank. So again, like I said, this book's probably a little bit harder to come by, but like I said, I thought it was a great one. Okay, moving on to the next four. So, and these are some of my favorites. So the first one up is this is the Bank Directors Bible, Commandments for Community Bank Directors. Now, this is the third edition. They just came out with the fourth edition of this book. It is, I think, in my opinion, it's ridiculously expensive. You could probably pick, and this is written by a gentleman named Jeffrey Garish. And Jeffrey does a great job. It's a really dynamite book. It kind of, so the way that this book is written really differently. It's written as basically like a kind of like a collection. How does Jeffrey state this in here? It's kind of like this third edition of the Bank's Director's Bible, Commandments for Community Bank Directors. And this is really focused on community banks, this book. This book represents an updated compilation of articles prepared over a period of over 25 years of dealing exclusively with community banks. The purpose of the book is to provide community bank directors and CEOs with insight with respect to the myriad of issues they encounter as directors of a community bank. As an added bonus, I have included 5 additional, more detailed articles regarding the director's role in mergers and acquisitions, the lending function, general duties and responsibilities, capital raising, and subchapter S. So a lot of great topics in this book, and it talks about like the 10 commandments for community bank directors, enhancing shareholder value, effective community bank strategic planning, chartering a new banks, dealing with the regulators in an uncertain environment, controlling a community bank's destiny, community bank mergers and acquisitions, buying a bank for stock or cash, selling your bank for stock, branch acquisitions, obtaining, retaining, and motivating superior bank directors, officers, and employees, and thinking about taking your holding company public, and then dealing with fair lending issues, and then community bank corporate governance, developing your bank's insurance strategy, and then basically additional articles on raising capital, directors' duties, other so on and so forth. So this is a, like I said, this is a dynamite book. It's a little bit more expensive than the other ones. For the latest edition, I think it costs maybe like $300, which again, I think is a little ridiculous. So I would recommend just getting the third edition for right now, because you could probably pick up the third edition for $80 or $90, something like that. And like I said, and I think it's great because this book is more in depth. It is, how many pages is this? This gets to be kind of a more normal sized book. It's probably about 250 pages or so. Yeah, it looks like about 206, 210 pages, but it covers a lot more in terms of, like, capital raising, M&A, different things you should cover in there. So, and then the next book is an older book. This is called The Bank Director's Handbook. Basically the board member's guide to banking and bank management by Benton Gulp. And this is an absolute classic. I think every bank director, anybody who serves on any bank board, should own and have a copy of this book on hand. Now, this book is older. It gets back to like 1996, but a lot of the, even though like some of the things in here have, updated as far as like certain regulations or laws, compliance, maybe a little bit of the accounting rules and stuff like that. But some of the stuff in here really is timeless. Bank directors' duties, strategic management, developing bank marketing strategies, evaluating banks' financial performance. And I think that's where one of the areas where this bank really shines is evaluating a bank's financial performance, bank capital, understanding bank capital, asset and liability management, dealing with interest rate risk, managing derivatives, credit policy and practices, dealing with fraud and insider abuse, something that the other books really don't touch on, director's view of internal controls and auditing, mergers and acquisitions. So, and this book is about, again, more normal 271 pages, but even though, like I said, this is older, highly recommended. This is definitely the absolute book that you need to have. Next book is Performance Measurement for Financial Institutions, Methods for Managing Business Results. And this is by Ernst & Young. And again, it's a little dated at being back in 1995. But again, I think a lot of the stuff in here it might have some changes over the years, but a lot of this stuff, I would say, 80 to 90% of this stuff still holds true. And it's kind of like an introduction to performance measures. In part 1, part 2 is income statement components and performance measures. It really talks a lot about income statement components, cost accounting approaches and methodologies, activity-based costing, information technology, transfer pricing of funds, balance sheet components. So, really gets into the nitty-gritty of, financial management and accounting for a bank, capital issues, getting started, organizing and staffing, system design considerations, system implementation, planning and budgeting, cost and expense management. So definitely this is, definitely another book that I think that people should get. And then finally, the last book is The Art of Bank M&A, Buying, Selling, Merging, and Investing in Regulated Depository Institutions in the New Environment. And this is written by Alexander Lejoux and Dennis Roberts. And this is a more recent book. It's 2014. It's probably about 10 years old. But I just thought that this book does an excellent job of just going through, typical bank, M&A, like what are, banking overview. It starts out like banking overview, the regulatory environment, special issues for bank holding companies. And then it gets in from strategies to standards, bank strategies for growth and value, preliminary valuation for deal pricing, confirmation of bank due diligence, and then it gets into synergies, post-merger integration for banks, M&A, case in point, banking in the future, cross-border bank M&A, distressed and failed banks, investing in banks. So again, I think it's an excellent book that really lays out a lot of the concepts depending on what your bank's strategy is, like whether you're looking to buy another bank for growth, whether you're looking to get into new markets or new products, or if you're just looking to invest in other banks, whatever the case may be, or whether you're looking to sell yourself to another bank. So those are the 8 books that I basically recommend that basically should be on your bookshelf if you are on the board of a bank, or if you're thinking about getting on the board of a bank. And then finally, again, just real quick, like, why would you read these books? You know, some of the things to look through. So banking and regulatory framework, role of your role as a bank director, working with your board, managing committees. There's a bunch of different committees there. Risk management. You have, 7, 8 different major types of risk management, interest rate risk, credit risk, reputational risk, operational risk. I could go on and on. CAMELS, absolutely critical that you understand CAMELS. Internal controls and audits, surviving and enforcement action or different types of enforcement actions, consumer compliance, obviously regulation, and then significant banking legislation, what's going on, what's on the horizon. So that in a nutshell, I know there's a kind of a very quick rundown of those 8 books. But like I said, I just thought that this was a great time to just kind of look at, what are some great books that bank directors should be looking at, should be reading, should be considering. And like I said, if people were interested, maybe I'll do a deeper dive on some of these books in the future, but we'll see. But anyway, if you like this episode, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, as that helps the channel. Please remember, we are on YouTube, Rumble, and all major podcast platforms. Please leave your comments down below. If you like this episode, please make sure to share it with other people out there that you think might find an interest in this. And check out some of the other episodes on the channel. And I will be back and see everybody again real soon. Thanks a lot.